I mean, it's not such a funny argument.
Well, he's just gonna help you paint it just to paint it. So he would be doing paint just to paint it.
Just to have.
Yeah, and then Ken came down and put the beard and the hat and sunglasses on.
Yeah,
It was great.
cool.
I just remember thinking, I never noticed what
We even had mine to that, and all of a sudden.
I know they're working on the fire hydrants.
So my neighbor across the street, she's like, this is so funny. She said, because the guy who came and painted it was like 4 times as big as you. And guess what? He was in a city truck. I don't think your truck's a city truck. So I went down to Hammersmith and I was like, really guys? Come on. It was fun.
Yeah, it was.
We had fun. Well,
She wrote her thinking now.
yeah, nothing better than painting a fire hydrant.
Yeah, we could
Did you
just,
see that? All of a sudden they're all red.
you could do the holiday thing, you know, Valentine's there.
I say we do it.
Spring, you can do some pastel colors.
I say we can do it. Christmas.
See, until that.
Christmas would be really easy. We could paste the top green and then the little arms.
Jill, we should do this again.
I like it.
Put a little bell thing on the top of it.
That would be fun.
Yeah, they did. I don't know if you're ready.
Yeah, that's what I found out when I started. Okay, what's the deal? Then you find out there's different colors and sometimes I just count them. In-state, in-states are different.
I didn't even notice that. And then when I was at home, I started on other things. And I wanted to do it for you. Like, oh, where's your hairstyle? Is it? And I was thinking, it's under 1,000 feet, but the fire hydrant's right across the street. So they actually gave me a discount for like.
Right.
We moved in like, we were one of the first houses. Yeah, because we moved in 2012. Okay. So. Yes. So you guys like 6 months ago. So I didn't even notice the location. So, anyway, worked out.
Well, good.
This one. Okay, it's right by that.
Everyone, we're just delaying the meeting a few minutes. We think that the chairman will likely join us, so we're taking a few extra minutes. If not, we'll get started within about 5 minutes.
I've never been to a meeting that started on time.
Been keeping your record going.
No, you guys are keeping on.
That's true. Yeah, that's a great view from the park.
The
Can we do it, Stacy?
Well, you know, I thought some people would send some 10 minutes.
Never been in the military a day in my life.
Every now and then, you're right, every now and again it does, but it doesn't take.
Do word processing. And, about that, maybe turning it on.
Come back. I would suggest a hammer. Suggest these restart things. Like we did when we first did this setup a couple times. I'm back to it, right?
Well, my guess has been, you know, getting all the emails and
How old's your phone?
it's in the 80s, it's really correct.
Because, you know, that was about 2 years ago.
I know, slow down.
Yeah, so they sent me a
I didn't get the gavel out. Kid, just, can we have one?
We are going to go ahead and begin, and we hope that Ed is feeling okay. And Jennifer, I'm going to ask you to do the roll call, please.
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Delaney. Commissioner Dick.
President.
Commissioner Lushnet.
Present.
Commissioner Glover.
Present.
Commissioner Wilhelmy.
Present.
Commissioner Kemple.
Present.
Commissioner Hours. Commissioner Strop. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. And I'll ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have that on.
Next up is a review of the, excuse me, a review of the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes that were submitted by Jennifer? Does anybody have any changes? Seeing no, may I have a motion, please?
I'll motion that the minutes from the meeting, from last Board of Planning Commission meeting dated November 14th, is approved and passed.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we will be moving to the first and only item on our agenda for the evening, which is the final plat of Sanctuary Point, Filing 5, DA Tax 17, Tax 2018. And Jennifer, I hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Vice Chairman and members of the Commission. Your public hearing item tonight is a final plat for Sanctuary Point Filing 5, referred to as Project DA 17, 2018. Let's see if this is working. Let's do it the old-fashioned way. So this is a simple vicinity map to give you an idea of the area that we're referring to. It is shown in the middle of the screen here, identified as the site. So this is a fairly simple map, but it's one of the easiest ways to actually see what we're talking about. So all of Sanctuary Point is the sort of heavy outline, and you can see that this particular filing is right in the middle of Sanctuary Point, so it is not adjacent to any other neighborhoods or county properties or anything like that. It's all internal to Sanctuary Point. It is located on the north side of Sanctuary Rim, which is this curvy street bisecting the western portion of Sanctuary Point, just for a reference point of what we're talking about. And again, another reference, this is, shows the overall, the entire Sanctuary Point sort of development as it goes, with the approved PD site plans on top of the overall plan, and then furthest to the west is where you'll see the sketch plan for a future phase 3 that has not been brought forward at this time. So the portion that we're referring to, again, is right in this area on the north side of Sanctuary Rim, internal to the site within phase 2. So let's just summarize what we're talking about. Pretty small filing, not quite 16 acres. Again, in phase 2 was approved earlier this year. It came before both this commission and was approved by the Board of Trustees in March. Again, just as a reminder, that was for all of phase 2. There were some conditions as a part of that, and we will get into those just a few more slides as we go. So a summary of what is being proposed tonight with this plat: 53 residential lots, 3 tracks, and 3 streets. So again, in the overall scheme of things, this is a fairly small filing that we're seeing. The plat is consistent with the PD site plan, which is one of the most important aspects here tonight. And then the other bullet down there, all the code standards are met. So this is really a pretty straightforward plat before you tonight, again, consistent with the site plan, and they're simply designating the lots, the public streets, and the tracks. So I do have a slide showing you the plat. I know these are very hard to see, and so I do have a summary for you on the next slide. Again, 53 residential lots, the tracks, and then the 3 streets. Again, this is all located on the north side of Sanctuary Rim. So Sanctuary Rim is the boundary there to the south that you'll see that curve is Sanctuary Rim. So again, I know that diagram was very difficult to see, so I just wanted to include a summary for you here. Again, the tracks are actually quite large in this filing. About 1/3 of the filing are the tracks, those open space, trails, landscaping, drainage, right, all of those things. Your 53 lots, and then the right-of-way. As with everything that you've heard in Sanctuary Point, the right-of-way via the plat is dedicated to the town, maintained by Triview. Water and wastewater services are provided by Triview, as well as roadway maintenance. This doesn't work. So I mentioned this earlier. I did want to touch on it because every time we have anything in phase 2, I want to remind everyone of this, because this was an important discussion at the phase 2 approval hearings. There was an approval condition on the PD site plan The condition was actually limiting the number of land use permits that can be issued in Phase 2 before the connection to Glen Eagle Road is complete. That number is 40, and just as a summary for what land use permits are, they're essentially what the town has to issue in order for the builder or developer to get a building permit from Pikes Peak Regional Building Department. So that's for a building permit, is not at all related to the platting, which is what we're doing tonight, which is essentially, again, drawing those lot lines. So there's no condition related to the platting. They can plat as many of the lots in filing 2 as they would like, while still maintaining the validity of this condition. It really comes down to getting those building permits a little bit later in the process, which actually makes a lot of sense compared to the length of time to actually do the construction. It makes sense, right, to go ahead and plat. At least, in some instances, it can make sense to go ahead and plat the filings so that they can install the infrastructure and those types of things at the same time while the construction of Sanctuary Rim is underway. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another couple of filings right at the same time while that construction is happening. But again, land use permits will be limited to 40 before that connection is complete. So that means 40 homes could be built in Phase 2 before the connection is complete. And then even if they have every single lot platted, they won't be able to pull any more land use permits until that connection is completed. So I just wanted to highlight that. I know that there were some questions about sort of how that fits in with this overall platting process. And with that, very long explanation, staff does recommend approval. Again, the proposed plat does meet all the code requirements and is consistent with the PD site plan. But staff can answer any questions you may have.
And is the applicant here this evening?
They are here and can answer questions if the board would like.
I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Do we have a date of when Sanctuary Rim Drive is going to be Glen Eagle?
I believe it is.
A proposed date?
We have reviewed and approved the construction drawings for both Sanctuary Rim and the connection piece. Those are actually in our office to be signed at the moment, and so that has been sort of the next step. So those have been reviewed. Those will be approved within the next couple of days, and then they would be able to start construction. We could certainly ask the applicant if they know how long that will take, but my understanding is that construction would start fairly soon.
It's a lead into, because that will provide Sanctuary Point 2 exits in case there's an emergency, correct?
2 permanent exits. In the meantime, there are emergency access points.
Okay, because,
Just while we're having this discussion, there's one slide that you gave like an overview of the whole thing. Would you mind bringing that up just so I can stay oriented? That one there, thank you
Sure.
very much. Okay.
so one of the concerns I have with the connection of Sanctuary Rim Drive, and that provides 2 ingress points for Sanctuary Point. The development below Sanctuary Point, Promontory Point, still only has 1. And back in, when originally Promontory Point was proposed to be developed, it was gonna be 290 plus homes. And the planning commission, or trustees, saw that there was only 1 exit in case of emergency because of the trees up there and fires and such like that. So the developer went back and they reduced the number to 259, and that's what was approved. So one of my concerns is now we're just increasing the number of people that have access on Glen Eagle to exit in case of an emergency.
Per what was approved by the board with the Phase 2. So that's how I would have to answer that, is that has already been discussed, considered, and approved.
So, and you'll excuse me because I wasn't here during the Phase 2 hearing. So the black is Sanctuary Rim Drive. It's going to be constructed through the open area that will eventually be Phase 3.
That's correct.
It will go through, and what is the area to the left here, it says proposed home place annexation.
So that property has, again, this sketch plan is from approximately 2005, 2006 originally.
Okay.
This corner, if you will, is what's called Home Place Ranch, which is currently under review for development.
Okay.
So what was approved by the board after approximately 18 months of negotiation was, again, what I mentioned, that Phase 2 would be limited in land use permits to no more than 40 until the construction, which meant the continuation of Sanctuary Rim Drive all the way through Phase 2, through Phase 3, and then basically this sort of L-shaped connection, which goes through Home Place Ranch to connect
Okay.
to the northern end of Glen Eagle Drive.
Okay.
So the way that was that condition was sort of came about and construed was in such a way that at that time it was not clear whether Sanctuary Point would be that far along to develop or Home Place Ranch would be that far along to develop. So there was no definition put on who had to make the completion, right? It was simply that it had to be completed before more than 40 land use permits, essentially before more than 40 new homes could be built in Phase 2. And so that was what the developer, the residents, the county residents that were very active as a part of that hearing, and the Board of Trustees all agreed to. And so that the plat tonight, I would remind everyone that the plat tonight really is independent of that, because that is still in place. That had to do with the Phase 2, which is approved, and those were the conditions. And this is simply the platting. And the platting, there was no type of condition put on any of the platting, which is essentially drawing the lot lines, right?
And if you could, the dotted lines that exist here, but that weren't, I just want to make sure that the trails that had been discussed are still present. We have the clearance for those. And there was a discussion about a pocket park. And where exactly would that be within this, tonight's discussion? Is it going to be up on the left?
I don't think it's in this phase. I think it's in this phase.
I apologize, I'm reviewing to follow the, to remember exactly. And perhaps the applicant would be able to answer that a little more clearly.
Okay. All right.
Well,
So
just wait and
before I have
see.
you come up, does anybody else have any questions for staff? Do you have any questions for staff, sir? No? I don't. Then the applicant, please.
Hi, my name is Lauren Moreland. I'm Vice President of Classic Homes and Project Manager for Sanctuary Point. The park you might be referencing, there's 3 tracks, as Jennifer stated, with this by the plat.
Does that help?
Within PD Site Plan 2, Phase G, which is the last phase that will be constructed within PD Site Plan 2.
Yep.
The Phase G Park, which I think is about 8 3/4 acres.
Okay.
So that's our current borrow and dump site. So as we move dirt in and out from constructing homes, stock excess dirt, kind of where her cursor is on the
Where is
screen, where the arrow is, that's all Phase G, and so that's all one large park. Up and to the left of her cursor, there's kind of a black little ring there. That's the actual playground area and park that will lay south of Filing 5
Okay.
plat, and kind of the parking lot for the mail kiosk.
But it'll be adjacent to this cluster of smaller
Yeah,
homes?
directly across Sanctuary Rim Drive.
Okay.
And then to better answer your question in regards to construction, so we filed for grading and the ability to remove trees. So everything within the previously approved Filing 4 plat, the roads have been cut in and the trees have been cleared in those roadways. Sanctuary Rim Drive, obviously, we have put in a large water transfer line from Promontory Point to the tank site that is on the phase 2 line of Sanctuary Point. And so those trees and that roadway were cleared for the most part, 80 to 90% back when the project first began 3.5 years ago. And so we're very close on grading, within 2 to 3 weeks of complete grading within the boundary of Sanctuary Point. And then the 1,100-foot, linear foot on center line extension through Home Place Ranch is staked. There's 2 easements that have been recorded for that. One is for grading, one is for public access, and both of those have been recorded. And grading on that section of road, there's not a lot of grading there. That should commence in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, as Jennifer stated, we're allowed 40 land use and or building permits, no COs prior to the permanent connection being made. And so we anticipate that construction, depending on what kind of winter we have, obviously that can delay the schedule by 30 to 45 days. But the hope is at some point this summer, we'll have that connection made.
With that connection being made, are you still have in place restriction for construction equipment to go through the main
No,
entrance?
it's a public road. Actually, this promontory point is second point of access out to the east, looping around to Baptist Road, because that will create a complete connection and loop from Baptist Road, Glen Eagle. It swerves around through Home Place Ranch, all the way through Sanctuary Point, and connects back to Baptist Road. So technically, it gives a full loop there. 2 points of access for both vehicles.
Real quick, just curious, the size of these lots seem to be under 4,000-foot square lots, just smaller, just from in the area. What is the vision for that? Is that just more condos? Or?
No, they're single-family residents that we
Single-family.
built several other times throughout town, and invite, you know, basically affording a different price segmentation there. You can see some smaller lots in PD site plan number 1 on the northern boundary, about a third of the way through or half the way through PD site plan 1. Those were paired patio homes. And then we try something. The topography as we move west, really the eastern portion of this site was about as flat as we were gonna get. As we move west, the topography gets tougher and tougher. And so overlooking the park with the grading that will happen there, it made sense to put this smaller footprint product on there, just to add another, you know, market segment. Sure. Thanks.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome.
Now I'd like to go ahead and open the floor for public comment on this item. When you come up, you have to state your name and your address and sign in on the sheet that should be present on the podium. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak on this?
Adrian Limon, resident of Promontory Point. I'll reference my address. Home address is 15876 Transcontinental Drive. Commission members, thank you for your time. Director Manning, Planner Jones, thank you for your time and an opportunity to comment here. My concerns with regards to this goes back not just to Plat 4, or that was already approved per your information, but I don't recall seeing a public notice for a hearing for the fourth one.
Madam Chairman, are we answering questions
What
from?
is, I'm sorry.
My
for
concern
Plat
is that
4,
for the approval that included the connector, the sanctuary room connection in through Home Place Ranch, as well as the connector into Promontory Point.
So, and this would be my recollection, which may not have the dates entirely accurate. This was heard approximately, I want to say 6 to 8 months ago.
The approval by the board was in March of this
Okay.
year for phase 2, which is when the connection was discussed.
Okay. So is that what you're talking, this is the connection that you're discussing?
Yes, because I don't recall seeing a public notice with regards to that hearing. So for example, the public notice signs that are kind of put up in areas, I don't
Right.
recall seeing that. So
Okay.
I'm not sure how we were supposed to be aware of these hearings.
So public notice is statutorily required both to be present on the site, and then anybody who's within 500 feet of any point of the development,
Right.
any landowner is going to be notified, then that matter is going to be heard. It's also published.
It's also published in the Gazette, that's correct, 15 days before the first hearing, which is the Planning Commission hearing. And I do have all the records that all the public notice requirements were met for this filing, filing 4, as well as phase 2 back early in the year.
I believe the gentleman's talking about the connection.
Yes, specifically at the northern end of Glen.
Yeah, there was
Drive.
no public hearing required to approve the connection, physically. In other words, it's not platted, so there's no plat that would be advertised for a public hearing. It's an easement at this point in time that was required of them as a part of the other development. And the construction drawings don't require a public hearing. So it's it's a public access being created through an easement and being constructed by an arrangement that Sanctuary Point developers have made.
Yeah, my concern is that that conversation happened within the context of those previous plats. So we didn't have notice as residents that those conversations were happening. So I understand what you're saying, that there's no specific requirement to have a hearing for that, but that conversation took place within the previous plat discussion.
That conversation took place at the time of phase 2 approval before the board
Right.
in March.
Yeah, I got
There have
that.
been no other conversations about that, other than the exact same statement that I made in tonight's hearing, that the filing, just the clarification that the approval condition was still in place and that approving these filings was not a violation of that. That was the only thing that was said at the filing 4 hearing regarding the connection.
So here's kind of what I'm getting, we can kind of work through this together, is that we have 259 homes in Promontory Point that are directly impacted by any construction traffic coming through our community. Now, we've spent, and this past year, we have spent, a team of us and our residents have spent over 100 hours invested in open line of communication with 7 different entities, which includes the planning, city planning, as well as NEPCO, as well as Home Place Ranch. We've been in very engaged discussions, and all of a sudden, there's been a shift because of the slowdown and because of the obstacles that Home Place Ranch has faced. Now, all of a sudden, they're provided an easement. But within that conversation, we weren't aware of that easement being provided. There's no public notice. How are we supposed to know about that? We have 259 residences. We have a genuine concern about 40, 60,000 pound vehicles coming down through our community of homes where there's a speed limit zone of 25 miles per hour. So with all the work that we've invested in an obvious effort to engage the developer, the original developer, or the lead developer, which was Home Place Ranch, there's now been a shift. My concern is that we weren't properly advised. There wasn't a notice put at the end of Glen Eagle Drive saying, hey, there's gonna be a conversation which includes this connection here, which is for this plat 4, whether it was 6 months ago or not. But our residents here, I would imagine, would have seen those signs as we did the one for plat 5.
So is the concern the connection itself, or is it the construction traffic that
Yeah.
will happen as a result of the connection because this area is still being developed?
Yes, Chairman Delaney, that is exactly the case. From the very get-go in our conversation with Home Place Ranch, our community never ever stated or implied, we're not gonna let you build. They can speak to that as well as my conversations with them. We've always been wanting to have a proactive engagement with them. We had a large, broad consensus through multiple entities that construction traffic was going to be routed to the north via Higbee Road, whether it was through a gravel temporary access road specific and dedicated to construction vehicles, or whether the county was going to require them to actually complete the extension in order to allow another access or exit point out of the community. So yes, that is exactly our concern. We have 10 bus stops on Glen Eagle Drive. It's 25 miles per hour through the curves. We have 8 pedestrian crosswalks there. And we've invested already 100 hours in working with Home Place Ranch, only to all of a sudden the conversation kind of happened quietly off to the side, and we weren't made aware of it when we, in full faith, engaged in an effort to try to work with the developer in order to address our concerns. And Brian Kneep and Phil Stupeford, who represent Home Place Ranch, I have a direct line of communication. I've exchanged over 25 emails with them back and forth. So I'm a lot concerned about what has happened with regards to this sanctuary room connection and the easement, which we weren't made aware of, or there was no notice, no way to know about it, because there was no public notice posted in the most obvious spot for 259 residences, which is at the end of Glen Eagle Drive North in our community. So I'm not sure what can be done. What I want to do is extend, again, our efforts that we've already demonstrated with Home Place Ranch and have those same type of conversations with the entities involved with regards to construction traffic. Ideally, if we can get some sort of agreement that, look, Sanctuary Point, Classic Homes, we don't have a problem with you building. We welcome you to the community. What we don't want to do is experience another 10 years of construction traffic, semis, concrete trucks and mixers going through our community when 2 times a day there's 10 bus stops happening, 50 kids getting on and off buses. So I'll stop there for a moment, should you have any questions.
So make sure, just for clarification, is that you're not objecting to the eventual connection, and when the traffic is comprised of normal residential traffic, the use of which will be by the eventual residents within this
Yes.
home. There's no objection to that.
Correct, even the model homes, we understand that, as we understood with Home Place Ranch in the initial conversations, look, as soon as you get a model home in, we know that we have to accommodate. You're not gonna send your potential customers coming in through a gravel road on the north side. We can appreciate that.
But you want the construction traffic to not come through.
Exactly. And so one of my suggestions would be, again, if the gravel road to the north going to Higbee is an opportunity that, again, there was a broad consensus on that from Tri-View, Home Place Ranch. Sanctuary Point, Classic Homes was a secondary stakeholder to that whole conversation. I don't know the intensity or the direct amount of involvement, but they were a secondary stakeholder in those conversations. So for those reasons, again, whether it's, again, it is somewhat relevant to hear because what you're speaking to today with the Sanctuary Rim and that connection, and then the connector, whether it was a conversation on Plat 4 or Plat 5, I think this should be addressed because I also have over 200 signatures from our residents.
That they want to keep the construction traffic out of.
Yes, and this was a matter of fact, this was a process, and this was part of our effort, our proactive effort in direct communication with the builder themselves, raising our concerns. They were very welcoming of those. They were conceding those. The whole idea of why a gravel road to the north was even considered was because of us raising up this issue and our concern to our community. They listened. We really appreciated that. So we'd like to continue that conversation, but if we can get a stipulation, my hope is that you as the commission members would speak up on behalf of Promontory Point and the impact that it would have for us. Because we've done, and as I've just kind of walked through, we've done everything in our power to proactively engage a developer and not merely come up at the 10th, 11th, 12th hour and say, we don't want you here.
Okay.
Is Farmers Road an option?
Pardon?
Farmers Road's an option?
Tell me what Farmers Road
We
is.
don't understand why an option would be explored. The plan for this has been approved through public hearings. This is simply a mechanism for the implementation of a previously approved plan.
So we understand that it's a previously approved plan, and I think there aren't objections to the plan. I think what the community is coming up and saying is that one of the natural consequences of this stage of the plan would be the potential for construction traffic to go through areas not meant to handle construction traffic. So, let's just, do you have anything else to say before we go to the next
I'd
person?
like to just offer you, what I did was put together a small little 2-page front and back presentation which details out the risks incurred should construction traffic be coming through Promontory Point. On the backside are kind of my talking points, alluding to, again, the amount of bus stops that we have, the crosswalks, 2 recreational parks butting up against Glen Eagle Drive, as well as the fact that we have secured 200-plus signatures from our residents to emphatically ask for some consideration to the construction traffic. We are not saying we don't want you to build. We're saying please work with us to help avoid these risks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak?
I'd like to say
please.
My full name is Elizabeth Everett. I live at 15658 Old Post Drive in Monument. I would just like to talk to the safety, just because I have kids that are on the bus stops. And where I live is right on that 25-mile-an-hour curve that would be extremely impacted. We have a bus stop there, and there's 11 kids that get on and off just on the, I guess, east side of the road. On Mondays, we have garbage trucks coming up and down Glen Eagle Drive, which is fine. But every day, on a Monday, I see them barely able to stop at the bus stop when the bus is sitting there. They are squealing their brakes because they are coming from the north around the curve, which is extremely difficult to see, and there are numerous bus stops right there. And I know that if you add all these large trucks, it's going to be scary. And we have kids from the ages of 6 to 11 at that bus stop. And it's not just that bus stop, there's numerous ones right around that area. And they're coming, the bus is coming twice a day, morning and night and afternoon. So anyway, that's all I wanted to add, was really just what I witnessed from just garbage trucks. And it's not safe now. And if you guys allow this to happen, there's going to need to be some serious safety discussions on speed bumps, on police patrolling this area, and other things, because it's difficult right now to keep the kids safe. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Christine Zarnowski. My address is 16041 Denver Pacific Drive. And I would just like to say, when something like this is approved, safety really needs to be considered. And I would like to see, with an approval, consideration, just as we've said before tonight, we really have to be careful. The kids have had some near misses. I've seen them up at my end of Promontory Point, and it's very scary. So we'd like to see if you could ask the developer to, participate in a discussion with the community to allow for that gravel road to be put in, construction traffic on that particular gravel road. That would make a huge difference in safety. And that's all I need to say. I'll get my name down. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rachel Jameson, and I live at 15628 Old Post Drive, and I just want to echo what everybody's already said. We have the curbs, we have bus stops for middle school and high school earlier in the morning. It's dark at this point. I don't want to see those construction vehicles going up. It's just not safe. We've got the elementary school coming later, so we've got probably at least 16 bus stops, and we're hitting those 4 times a day because of the difference there. So again, same points, we're just looking out for the safety of the kids.
My name's Tom Olson. I live on Midland Valley Way, and our backyard overlooks Glen Eagle. And we've been here about 3 years. And while they were developing the upper level of our development,
I witnessed construction trucks going by our house. I never see them going the speed limit. Fact is, I don't see very many cars going the speed limit. And it's not a very good road, and and as you're coming down the hill from the top, you have the playground on one side, another playground. You got numerous. We have a bus stop right out in front of our place. It's not fair to the people that bought from Classic and the other companies, and to come through with their construction vehicles. In fact, when I went to buy my house, I asked several times in Classic people about that access. Would that be done? Oh, no, there's no plans for a road through there. That property is under litigation and all kinds of stuff. Oh, that'll never happen. Well, I just hear from a Classic person saying that 3 years ago they were planning all this. So they should have been planning roads. This is one development, that's another development. And they should have their access road in their development.
Thank you for reminding me. Would anybody else like to be heard?
My name's Arthur Fisher Olson, and that's my husband. We live at 159 Midland Valley Way, 86 Midland Valley Way. What I'd like to know is, why is it impossible to make this happen, to have another access for these construction trucks? Somebody gonna look at that and come up with some concrete things about cost and why that cannot be done. I just don't understand that. There's so many issues that can be solved by having that road put in for the construction traffic, and I think it would be wise to please take a look at that. We just beg you to please take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I retake just a few comments?
Just one sec. Does anybody else, any other member of the public would like to be heard before we hear from the applicant again? Seeing none. Gentlemen, do you mind if, I'm gonna close public comment at this time. And if the applicant would like to come back up and address what's been brought up?
I'll address first what Mr. Olson was stating in regards to Classic Homes not having a plan for a roadway from Glen Eagle Extension, and we didn't have. That should have been on Goodwin Knight and whoever ended up with Home Place Ranch. Historically, and I've been with Classic Homes 23 years, I've never witnessed a developer being pushed to build off-site roadways outside of their property boundaries. And in this situation, when both of these plans were originally approved for Home Place Ranch in the early 2000s and Sanctuary, and then we shelved it because of the economy, really the anticipation was Home Place Ranch was going to be there long before Sanctuary got there. And we shelved it for 10 years, roughly. And so on the 11th hour, it was actually a Sunday meeting with the residents of Kingswood who did not want the connection through Kingswood, and then we found that Kingswood would not support the traffic count. So this is all supported by traffic engineers in their reports. It would not handle over 750 traffic count per day. And we came to an agreement on March 18th before the March 19th Board of Trustees hearing in regards to being willing to, as a permanent second access in the Sanctuary Point, to build off of our property through Home Place Ranch. Goodwin Knight, Brian Kniep were willing to work with us and grant easements for us to build that roadway to connect Glen Eagle as the second point of permanent access. With that said, obviously Glen Eagle Drive is a collector. It's a public road. And Glen Eagle goes from the northern boundary of Promontory Point right now, all the way to Struthers. As you can see, somebody purchased the golf course, clear down towards Northgate Boulevard, one intersection up. And so somebody bought that golf course, they're developing that, they need access to that. It's a public roadway. There are numerous bus stops currently in Sanctuary Point, and as we continue to develop west, there will be more bus stops and construction traffic going both ways. While we as a developer and general contractor try to monitor that, as I tell homeowners at homeowner meetings, please, if you see this, let's get the police involved. Typically what we find, and we recently had this in place in one of our other communities, we had police and one of their speed trailers brought out. And about 65% of the speeding violations were to residents, not the construction traffic. Not to say that they don't speed. We don't have control over whether our kids speed or anybody else, but we're, tonight, we're kind of intermingling two things. We went through the proper process, proper public notification. There had to be 50 or 60 people here on the night of March 19th in regards to what was going to be required of Classic Homes with the continuation of Sanctuary Point and the PD Site Plan 2. And one of those was the 40 land use permits prior to the permanent connection, no COs. And that was agreed upon. Residents were here from Higbee Estates, Kingswood, Fox Run, and we addressed those and the board voted in favor of that. Tonight, really what we're talking about, what you're voting on, is just the legal boundaries of Filing 5. If there's an issue with that connection, that ties back to the PD Site Plan 2 and the Filing 4 plat, which has already been approved by both Planning Commission and Board of Trustees. So I wasn't going to get up and speak and outside of the subject at hand, which is the Filing 5 plat. That's what we're looking at, but we are not interested with that being a public road and stating that we're not going to allow construction traffic down that. There will be construction traffic on that. It's a public road that and we ran construction. It is set up to handle construction traffic because we put in the 250 plus units, us and Vantage, in Promontory Point. We were the developer of Promontory Point. And that would have been like the people in the first filing or 2 or 3 of Promontory Point saying they wanted no more construction traffic beyond where we built for them. We don't want you moving towards Transcontinental, Denver Pacific, any of the roads to the north, because we have construction traffic going past our homes. That doesn't make sense. Throughout this town as it is expanded, these are public roadways. If they're private, that can be regulated. On the public side, this is a primary connection. It's a collector. It's designed for this. There's a lot of construction traffic. I understand the concerns. I've got 3 kids. And I worry too about speed and construction traffic or not. People drive crazy. They're distracted. They're texting, et cetera, et cetera. There's a concern with all bus stops, and I feel that, and I understand that. But that's not the point of A, the plat for Filing 5, and B, limiting construction traffic. Goodwin Knight and what they've been doing, having neighborhood meetings in order to progress Home Place Ranch, that's wonderful for them to be willing to push construction traffic to Higbee, but the next thing you're gonna face are all people surrounding Higbee coming in here to complain that they don't want construction traffic there. So now what do? You can't stop construction traffic on both ends, so who are you being fair to and who are you being unfair to? Because you gotta get construction traffic in there. If it's approved and meets the plans through the town, and it's constructible, that should be allowed. And that's tough to restrict and force all that traffic one way or the other. And so we're not in favor of postponement of this because it really has nothing to do with the already approved connection. And this is for Filing 5. fact that regardless of telling contractors, you can't use this access, that access, that would have to be monitored by police, but how do they monitor that on a public, roadway? Any questions?
I do. Would you be willing to participate in the discussions happening between Promontory Point and Home Place Ranch with regards to how they're going to be handling their traffic?
That is up to their traffic engineer, and I don't know what their designs are gonna be.
That wasn't my question. Would you be willing to participate in those discussions with the neighbor, with the Promontory Point neighborhood about perhaps working with Home Place Ranch to arrive on a universal solution with regards to construction traffic?
Please understand that we made an enormous concession to be willing to build that roadway, that 100 feet of road through Home Place Ranch to connect Glen Eagle to Suffice for Safety. That's unprecedented. That's never happened that I'm aware of in El Paso County, period. Town of Monument, Fountain, City of Colorado Springs, El Paso County. That's never happened before. So we've made significant concessions as a developer to do that. And I think we've met all of our commitments that ties Sanctuary Point. I think as far as what Goodwin Knight and Home Place Ranch is looking at being willing to do on grading a two-track or a dirt road to the north to Higbee, that's on them, and they've got mouse ground to contend with, and they've got to get further along in their process. But I think we've made all the concessions at this point that we're willing to make.
So how many more years do you think it's going to take for the rest of Sanctuary Point to develop?
That would be, I don't think I could give you an accurate answer on that, because
Guesstimate's
we
fine.
worked through this, and we thought we would be building in here back in '06, '07.
Right.
We didn't even start pulling permits in here until 2016.
Mhm.
And so there was a huge delay. We know that there's another cycle coming, right? I think we're at the top. I'm not a forecaster and to know if that's accurate, but if we hit another deep down cycle, it could move to 20 permits a year. Well, we've got 273 units approved for PD site plan 2. The overall sketch plan and annexation agreement into the town of Monument states 600 units here. We currently have about 148 residents in Sanctuary Point. I would anticipate that we'd get another 100 over the next year, but then it's all dictated by market. And so it can range anywhere from, maybe 450 units at 100 a year, you'd get through there in 4.5 years. If we drop down to 30 or 50 a year, you double that time. It could be anywhere from 5 years to 15. Obviously, that sounds unrealistic, but really don't know based on market conditions.
And the reason that I bring that up is that while it doesn't pertain to the issue before us right now, which is the platting, I think in terms of working with the adjacent developer, if they're already going to be grading a road and diverting traffic to Higbee Point, there would not be an extraordinary expense. It would just simply be the incremental to bring your trucks up the same way. To
I understand,
allow
but I think
for,
staff would support me in helping understand that we've been having public neighborhood meetings and public meetings on Sanctuary Point for 12 years. And every step along the way, we have worked with the surrounding neighborhoods. And
okay, so you worked with Sanctuary Point. When was the last time you sat down with them to talk about the traffic?
With Promontory Point?
I'm sorry, with
Promontory Point will be,
I'm sorry, with
Promontory
Promontory
Point will be involved with PD Site Plan 3 because it's within the 500 feet of their boundary. So they'll be more involved with Phase 3 PD Site Plan. But
And-
in the current phase, with building this road and this connection, which is millions and millions and millions of dollars, we're putting a road all the way through Phase 3 PD Site Plan, which has not been approved yet, but we platted that into filing 4. There's about 3,600 linear feet of road there, plus the 1,100-foot connection. We're putting in a mile of roadway that's really gonna be grossly underutilized. And I think your public improvement manager here for traffic would support me in stating that limited traffic on these roadways, when you put in a big collector road like that, and you don't have the traffic count, you can have shrinkage of asphalt, things pulling away from the curb and gutter. It can create more warranty issues in the future. And so we're putting an expansive roadway that is designed to handle all 600 units,
Right, but then we also talked about that road then will be dedicated over to Triview, and Triview will be responsible for maintenance issues.
We have a 2-year period that we have to stand behind that.
Okay. So in terms of, because this is a community that you will need to be working with in the near future, I would think it would be perfectly reasonable to begin that process now.
I think we can have conversations, but please, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Promontory Point homeowners. We developed and built that, and we had to run construction traffic that way. That would be like anywhere in town if we're bringing construction traffic from anywhere, right? Nobody wants it on their street, but it's part of the process.
No, and I understand that though, but when we have another developer immediately adjacent to you and immediately adjacent being the Home Place Ranch developer, there's a solution that they are developing to deal with construction traffic. Making you part of that solution seems to be reasonable, that you would participate in those discussions.
And we could have the discussions, but I think the ultimate goal is, please do not allow any construction traffic on this stretch of Glen Eagle Drive. That's the ultimate goal of theirs, and I think that's an unrealistic request by them. And I know you're looking at right now, Goodwin Knight is working with them, and if you could look back through all of the, and I would encourage you to look back at where we started with Sanctuary Point on the initial meetings over the last 12 years, and the concessions we have made. It has been astronomical. It really has. And so we are much like Goodwin Knight. We've been here a long time. We plan on being here a lot longer.
And we want you to be here, want you to be here a lot longer. This neighborhood that you developed has flourished. And these are members of our community too, and we hope that they're here for a long time too. And that's why we think some discussions now can result in a better relationship over the next few years while you continue your development.
And Adrian and I communicate frequently. I know Adrian well. I built his home several years ago. And so the fact that, ultimately trying to limit the construction, again, we didn't have any complaints when we were far north end of Promontory Point, running the same amount of trucks, 40 units under production. We were still running the same amount of construction vehicles to benefit that neighborhood. And there were no complaints about that.
I didn't mean to cut you off. There's a logic argument. You're missing a logic point.
Okay.
So there is, and first of all, for everyone, I live in Midland Valley Way. I have 4 children. And I understand when I moved to the area, I see vision where it's going, there's growth. It's gonna happen. And they're young children and safety concern. But just in the words, I understand the growth, I understand the legal obligations. Concessions is a strong term, because that's like, we're benevolent, that's not true. You know what I'm saying, if it was more costly than beneficial, guess what, you move elsewhere in development. That's a normal thing, so that's, concessions, it starts to fall apart. I would tell you, so if we just say, for the answer, kind of get to just one of the answers that was asked multiple times, or questions asked multiple times. So there's probably about 400 more sites left. Let's just even, 400, now if we plat 3, and you move in down, move to the west as well, 400 sites, maybe 100 houses a year, maybe. Even in a low market, you're probably still gonna get 75. So bottom line, you're still getting, we got about 3 to 4 years of construction traffic. Is that fair? And that's just an answer, it's not a judgment, it's just an answer. So that's what we're looking at. The traffic flow for any neighborhood, for that kind of growth, I don't have any analysis or thoughts on that. All of your other previous points were logically made sense. But I just don't like when you say concessions, you're making a concession for a business proposition here. That's pretty straightforward.
But, and honestly, I mean, it's trying to be a good neighbor, and we do that frequently. And actually, Trustee Koopman commented on the fact that he appreciated how well we worked with the surrounding neighborhoods. At that meeting, he said it on record. Trustee Bornstein seconded that. And we are trying to work with, but.
Well, don't disagree with that. That's not the point in there. That was just a clarification. So what I'm saying is concession would be an ask here just to meet with the community. A concession would be putting extra parks in. That you know what I'm saying? Those come out of bottom lines. Those are things. A road is mutually beneficial, true. So it serves for us. We have to have, I'm assuming, based on what I've gathered, code for 2 exits, entries and exits. That's safety code. So providing an extra safety code, that helps. But
some of those other things, you know, it was just a simple ask here to just meet with the community and talk about options. You may discover that conversation, in that discovery, you may find out that there aren't any really options. We're just back to.
Sure.
It's just a minor, meeting. There's still code, there's still law that you still have to comply with. Everybody does.
Sure.
But you see what I'm saying, that's more of a, because time is a concession too, just minor amounts of time.
Sure.
Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
No, I'm just wondering, you know, it's classic, with the movement of the construction vehicles, because presently you're going through the main entrance.
Correct.
Is Classic willing to continue to go through the entrance until, even with this road being built, the secondary road being built, which is going to turn for the residents to use as a secondary means of getting in and out? Is Classic going to have just the construction traffic go through the main entrance until Hope Place Ranch comes up with their development and that extension, like you talked about, goes to Higby, where that then is going to be diverted from? Because you're almost working on some time frame instead of.
Not necessarily, because we're not sure how long it's going to get through the process with Home Place Ranch. We thought our PD site number 2 for sanctuary would be a 6 to 8 month process. I think it ended up 21, 23 months in that realm. You know, and there's a lot of wood chop for Home Place Ranch to get to where they're going.
But at the same token, if Classic agrees to have construction equipment go through the main entrance, right, and that mitigates a lot of residential concern. On both ends, we know, like you said, Home Place Ranch is still fluctuating through the planning process, and that's gonna take some time. Not only is it gonna take time with this road being constructed and homes being built. So in essence, and then we're gonna come up to the next review of the next plat, that's gotta go. So you would say, and estimating, hopefully by then, this would be addressed in having Home Place Ranch, having their development done or proposed, where that road is now going to be reviewed and completed. So all we're doing is asking on the residents' behalf to keep the construction traffic going through the entrance until that next phase comes up for review along with the finalized plan of Home Place Ranch, where that, because they had from my understanding, from what was being presented tonight was, they had the lead on that extension to that road, where you were secondary to it. But now, because of situations that happened with Home Place Ranch, and I understand Classic doesn't want to wait any longer because it is, as was said, a financial matter of development, making money, because right now the market is.
And Fire Marshal Baumgartner requested, he was part of the request for the connection.
Yes.
We were initially going to connect through
Yeah.
Kingswood as a secondary point, and we built Sanctuary Room Drive to the west boundary, and it was going to stop there until Home Place Ranch could build it. So it was connected Sanctuary Room Drive and Baptist at the east end, and then to connect at Kingswood. This is about 2/3 of the way through the project, and that's a county road out to Baptist. And then we were going to build Sanctuary Room Drive to the west boundary. And then when Home Place Ranch came online, which actually, during initial conversations, we had under contract, Home Place Ranch. And then once we built that, or once it got developed, the road connection would be made at that point. So, you know, as far as limiting construction traffic or forcing them to use the secondary access through, all the way through Home Place Ranch to Higby, they may or may not be willing to allow that. And I know we had similar discussions during the PD site plan 2 approval process, because the same comment came up then in regards to construction traffic and where we're going to direct it. And even at that meeting, the intent was they're going to be using both access points. Can we say that all of a sudden it's kind of this vision of, is 100% shipped down? Is it easier to come in through Promontory? Is it easier to come through Baptist? And I think that depends on which construction traffic you're talking about. Like all the lumber yards are out east.
But once Sanctuary Room Drive is connected to Glenwood, you're not just talking construction traffic, you're talking additional residential traffic out of Sanctuary Point coming through Promontory Point
traffic consultant with the engineer that evaluated all that. And we had to provide that to the town of Monument through this process to verify that all the roads were designed to handle the loads, based on resident count and traffic count average per day, whatever you wanna call it, 9.5 or 10 count per day. And so we provided all that, and that was part of that approval process, and in reviewing that, it still was a condition of an action. They realized that all the traffic engineering works for that, and I hear what you were saying about there. And again, we would prefer to be able to continue to use that for construction traffic. That doesn't mean it's all construction traffic. It would be, which direction are they coming from? Just like we, the homeowner traffic, there's gonna be homeowner traffic. This is a road that's designed to handle 600 units at 10 traffic counts a day. It's designed to handle 6,000. And if we talk about 150 occupied homes, or 200, 250, and we do that, we're still only a third of the way through what the road, and I say, well, we're showing design to handle, but actually, as Home Place Ranch gets built out, Gleneagle Drive was anticipated, the sizing through Promontory Point was set up to handle the proportionate share through Home Place Ranch. So I don't know what a collector is going to handle, but that stretch of Gleneagle was set up to handle the portion of Home Place, Central Point, Promontory Point, and all of those surrounding areas. So are we willing to sit down, even in Promontory Point? We are. Again, this was a condition of PD site plan 2, and that's why we're building it and making the connection.
As we go back to,
Well, I'm certain because we will be at the next phase of the plan that we will be hearing both from you and from the community again, so I'm certain we'll be hearing the outcome of those discussions that you guys will now be having with regards to traffic. So we look forward to hearing a positive outcome from us.
Okay.
Because we'll be hearing from you again, go ahead.
Well, not necessarily, this is not or against or anything, so if it's in plat 3, they're still outside that 500 feet, the same topic. That's just, it'll be if it meets code and everything else, same, this will already be a done deal, the road will be built, and plat 3 will be just for development like any other piece of land around here, no considerations to road or traffic or anything would be a part of that, would it?
I'm not
We'll
certain
still
I
have to
understand.
provide our studies that go along with PD site plan 3, and it will ultimately couple back. When we did those studies, the studies were done for all of Sanctuary Point. Just like Promontory, it's for all of Promontory, even if we're only doing filing 1. So those same environmental impact studies, traffic reports, all of that will be provided and have been provided. So it's the same document, but it still has to be attached to PD site plan 3 as far as how it meets the code and the town criteria, so you're right with that.
The road would already be. Yeah.
Oh, no, the
Yeah,
road
yeah.
will be in, but as they have to plat going out toward Promontory Point, is that Promontory Point community will be coming forward again, as will the developer be coming forward again for those final platting, because the plats have not been done for the west portion
Yeah, for
of the development.
The PD site plan 3, yeah, the phasing plan.
Yes, I'm sorry, I need to
Yes.
spacing, thank you. So this is a group that will be before us collectively again in the future.
I'm a little confused because I feel like I heard two different answers. Initially, the response being an willingness to work, and then after a little 10-minute back and forth, now there's a willingness, but I'm not sure that's.
We're willing to meet with them. As far as tonight stating that the outcome of those meetings, I think you were kind of clarifying that earlier. That doesn't mean the outcome, because we're willing to meet, is gonna be, we're gonna say no construction traffic. We'll have meetings and either agree to disagree, agree to agree, and have those conversations.
So, I mean, just my 30,000 foot view on this is I'm hearing legitimate concerns. I feel that falls right in line with the town of Monuments plan. What I'm not hearing is this idea that maybe we have two extremes, no use versus full use, true public road. And what can be found in the middle to mitigate the safety concerns, or at least alleviate the safety concerns, whether it's time of day use or other sort of solutions that could be talked to with the community, not here.
And currently, and things that happen behind the scenes that are outside of this realm, I'm in communication. I spoke with the Director of Transportation of District 38 2 weeks ago. seems like the school bus route is running at the same time that it seems like truss deliveries come in, and those big trucks have to weave their way in and dump on the lot, or concrete trucks. Seems like we're always pouring concrete at 7:30 a.m. or 3:30 in the afternoon, coincides with. And so the conversations that her and I are having are helping her understand how we're gonna phase PD site plan 2 and the various filings within, and how I see the construction flow going, so they can set up temporary school bus stops to try to alleviate some of the safety concerns. Obviously doesn't, alleviate them 100%, but through communication with her, how can we set up the school bus stops? How can we route that around how we're building the neighborhood? And she was so grateful, said she hasn't had that communication in the past with other developers, willing to work with her on, and what's your phasing plan,
And I
what's your
think-
thought process?
I think those are great conversations to have. What I would love for you to do is involve the community, especially Promontory Point, in those discussions. And we're gonna change from a headbutting atmosphere
Sure.
into a collaborative atmosphere of, they know development's coming, we know development's coming, we wanna work with you to make sure, and it sounds like part of the communication is happening with District 38, but just involve the community, because who are the people who are gonna, quite frankly, who are there day in and day out, who are gonna know the best places to temporarily move those bus stops? It's those folks sitting right behind you.
And it was, the most collaborative, is you with Kingswood, and local citizens, and just say, hey, this is happening. Let people voice their concerns, and then you guys can talk. What are the options?
Sure.
If you throw that out there and you're willing to support options, smallest or largest, it goes a lot towards building those bridges.
Absolutely.
Just between you and Promontory Point, you're missing a key component in there, so Kingswood with that, and that may be tough. I don't know the relationships at all, but.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the floor. We can have discussion among the commissioners now before we move forward. Any comments, concerns, items for discussion?
I have a question. What's the fellow's name from Plaza?
The gentleman who
Just what?
Lauren,
What is your name, sir?
Lauren Moreland.
Question for Lauren. You were asked the question, but I'm not sure I heard an answer. The assumption tonight has been that all construction traffic was going to find its way down Glen Eagle Drive. We all saw in our mind's eye truck after truck after truck fighting with school buses on Glen Eagle. But Commissioner Kimball asked the question that couldn't much of or most of the construction traffic be routed out on Baptist Road, the main entry. What is the answer to that question?
Can most of it, through July, and through, basically we'll be wrapping up by July, almost all of phase 1, the first 255 lots will be wrapped up, complete. And so all construction traffic obviously is handled at that entrance point at Sanctuary Drive and Baptist. Future phase 2, midway through, I think, again, we're all envisioning 100% of the construction traffic going west and then going south. In all reality, and I started to comment on that, I think it kind of depends on where they're coming from. And so, can I say it's 50-50, 60-40? I can tell you that the concrete facilities that deliver the concrete to the sites come off Marshall Road, out near Constitution. Our lumber yards, both lumber yards, are on that same exact corridor. So, almost all of them, if not all of them, come up 83 to, or Powers, up 83, down Hodgin Baptist, and in that access. Obviously, as we move west, down into phase 3, which hasn't been approved, are they willing to, they'll probably come in that way, and which way are they wanting to exit? So, trying to predict, I know the traffic study anticipates that. And so, is it gonna be 60-40? If I had to give you my gut feeling, initially, everybody's used to that connection to the east. it's gonna be 80-20 initially. As they find, if it's easier to exit the lower route, does it turn into 70-30, 60-40? I think it progresses as we move west, but the density lessens as we move west. I think the final PD site plan 3 is only 72 lots because of topography. So in working with, trying to tell the trades, I hate to make a commitment here in front of the board going, all right, we can tell our trades that we have to have 90%, 80% in the easterly access, only 20% can come in the west. Well, who polices that, right? I mean, you can try to pay attention to it, but you got site managers, superintendents on site. They're in the site. They're not seeing which direction the guys are coming from. So to make that commitment that I can guarantee we've got 100% in this direction or 80, I think I'd be fibbing you guys right now because I can't guarantee that. I genuinely can't.
But there are subcontractors to you, and they'll go where you tell them to go. I remember that during the construction, the site work for the townhouses on Lionsdale, there were signs all over saying which routes were legal to use for construction traffic. So the contractors didn't have a choice. They were to go where they were told to go, and I don't know if that was an agreement with the town or what, but
I don't know.
Sounds like to me that's some good meat for discussion with the Promontory Point homeowners.
And we did that on Kingswood, no construct, because that is gonna be, as we're building this, that is supposed to be a secondary access and no construction access signs. And I know Mr. Farmer is, you know, when he sees a construction vehicle, like my phone rings pretty quickly, so. But we're allowed to utilize that for large equipment that can't fit around the roundabout as you pull into the site. And he's okay with that.
But you've had great discussions with him. He has open access of communication to you.
He does.
And we would like the neighborhood of Promontory Point to have the same type of consideration made available to them.
And I've been available to Adrian. I think he's been the point man, and we've got a long-standing relationship, and I know we're gonna communicate more frequently as this moves forward.
I'm gonna work my way down there.
My questions are real quick. So everything's in compliance with, this is for the staff, everything's in compliance with code, correct?
Yes.
So then, because this is where I get to the plan document for monument. So at first, you know, the new development should not add to track, is there a code in line with that? To not detract from the quality of life and natural feature cherished by the citizens, or community values. Finally, many stated that they like community because they feel safe. And I'm just saying is that we're getting out of the realm of probably code for building versus code for a community's plan. I'm just wondering, how does this is, as a new member, how do you reconcile those types of issues?
I'd like you all, if not the chairman, to clarify whether or not the public input in the hearing is back at the table, because we just broke that by having a question to the public. So if we're going to have more questions to the public, they should be asked now, the hearing closed, and that's the end of the exchange between you and the audience.
Thank you.
So is that where we're at?
Is there any more questions for the applicant before I close? So I am formally closing. So no more discussions with the applicant or anything else. Thank you, Larry. Okay, now we're, you can ask, go ahead and ask.
That was between us.
I think your question had to do with the comp plan. Is that where you're getting that language, the comprehensive plan update? Sounds like a subject we could deal with in a work session such as the one we have later tonight. We're dealing with a plat for an approved PD site plan. It's pretty much a functional situation. There's not really any ability, in my opinion, to deal with the issues, with all due respect, that have been brought up and discussed tonight.
I'm just kind of confused because, I mean, if that's the case, then why do we have this? That's, and secondly, and once this document, the plan where there should be consideration for legitimate concerns of the community as part of what we do to approve or disapprove.
As I said, I think we can have that discussion apart from this particular request. I don't see it being part of this request. But if you generically want to know or discuss how those relationships occur, we can do that in a work session.
It seems like it's just a natural consequence of what we're being asked to approve is the increase of construction traffic. And so
Well, you're being,
hearing from the community and-
that discussion's occurred at the PD site plan approval, is what I'm saying. In the process, these types of concerns are to be addressed at that point, not now, when this is a plat of a portion of an approved plan.
Also, wasn't there, from that discussion back then, there was another plan that's now changed because of the delay of Home Place Ranch and the extension of Glenville to Higley.
Well,
And the fact that El Paso County has now stepped in.
the,
towards their concern.
there was no condition condition of any approval of the Phase 2 PD site plan that is now this a portion of which being platted that had to do with the Home Place Ranch extension.
There's no answer.
Any more questions or items for discussion? I think it's a topic for our work session.
I don't know what would be unreasonable about requesting to hear some feedback from continuation of this. And I know that might be a dirty word, but to say, you know, let's hear what happens in these discussions. Because I feel like talk is cheap. I hear promises. But nothing's binding, nothing's committed. And so that's wonderful, but I'd love to hear back from the community to hear, you know what, we had a good conversation and some agreements have been reached, or at least, you know, with the neighboring developments, we're actually making, yeah, this is gonna work. I'm not hearing anything that's prohibitively expensive, time consuming, or otherwise detrimental to this project.
And I think that we could ask, we do have space in our agenda for public comment on items not on the agenda. That's on our agenda every month. We will be meeting again on January, give me the date.
12th?
I know it's included in our package, I don't have the date in front of me.
9th would be the regular meeting. I don't know if there'll be business for that date.
We are anticipating a meeting on January 9th. Perhaps public comment could be brought forward on items not on our agenda about how discussions have moved forward and or not moved forward. And that would be the time and place that those concerns could be brought forward.
I'd love to hear it.
So, but there is a point here though, that this facility does have a PD approval. So that's the general development approval. We're here tonight to consider the plat for that one specific section. The discussion here has been, it's been needed because there have been a daisy chain of effects that come from this connection being made, but yet, it doesn't affect the platting for that one specific section that's here before us. And that's what we're here tonight to vote on, is the platting for that one specific section. And so does anybody have any concerns about plat that has been presented with the lot sizes and tracks for open space? Does anybody have any concerns about the platting? No, concerns about platting, sir? No. I don't, do you?
Just the cause of.
Yes.
That plat.
It is.
And it goes with the information like that, you'll know the track from quality of life.
And I think with regards to, we are stuck, and this is kind of like my monthly discussion about, we are stuck between what has been expressed by the community through the comprehensive plan. And yet in order to make that plan have force and effect, it requires our Board of Trustees to engage in zoning changes and updates to our code. And that effort has not been engaged in yet. And I've been encouraging for months that the money necessary and appropriate for that exercise has to be one, a budget priority. And then we have to go through that process as a community. And it's not simply a couple lawyers sitting in a room who are doing it. It's an active, community-involved project to update our municipal codes and our regulations, which is needed. And things that can be affected are developer fees, building notices, signage requirements, landscaping requirements, and also, the fact is, our comprehensive plan allows for buildings and ideas that do not exist yet within our town code. So we are caught in that conflict. We've been here for months, kind of having the same conversation. But this is yet another example of where that conflict, what that results in. And so, obviously, that action does still need to be taken. But we have an item before us for a vote, and it is the plat that has been presented. So if we have no further questions on the plat, I'm gonna, unless you guys have anything you'd like to discuss further, otherwise I'm gonna close discussion and ask for a motion.
I move that the planning commission recommend approval of project DA-17-2018 Sanctuary Point Filing Number 5 final plat, based on the finding of fact as presented in the staff report.
Do you have discussion?
I was
You
gonna
have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, I was looking for, I was gonna put in the, but we can't amend.
I don't think it has been closed yet. Jump the gun there.
That's okay. What, we can have it, does anybody want a second? Or do we wanna have a little bit further discussion?
I mean, if there's something outstanding, I don't know.
So procedurally, can we pause for discussion, Larry? With a
Discussion should be on the motion.
Okay, so on the motion.
Or if there's no second, you ask for another motion.
So do you have something you want to add to the, or discussion on the motion?
I would like to see, amended that construction traffic only go through the main entrance or by use of Farmers Road until the gravel road due to the established.
And
For this construction site, which is gonna continue on to the further, I won't get into, through four, 5, 6 phase for them.
so,
Basically trying to set the parameters now by deciding to reinvent the wheel when later development comes up and this becomes a real issue.
could we, I would suggest that we look at it, we give the parties involved the opportunity to communicate and come to a resolution
But until then,
among themselves. But if we put a condition out, it would be a condition on this one segment, yet not on, potentially on the remainder, which would be kind of unworkable.
4, 5, and 6, but by then we would also estimate that the other developer has their plans that and it's approved and then that extension is.
But right now, we're just voting on the, for this plat, and to put that condition, I think, on this plat.
It's just a continuation of what they're already doing. Everything's going through the front, the main gate right now anyway.
But you're putting a condition on the platting, which I don't think is the appropriate place for this condition in this plat. I think when if the parties are not able to come to a resolution in and amongst themselves, then when they have to come forward for the next phase of the project, I think that would be an appropriate time to look at a condition if the parties can't reach a resolution. But I think we have to give them the opportunity to find an acceptable solution.
Can I clarify, are you saying you want the construction equipment for the road to go through Sanctuary Point? Or are you saying it for the building of the existing houses for the plat? So those 53, well, 40, right, until the road's complete. So those 40 houses have to continue to go through.
Yeah.
Or are you talking about the road construction?
No,
Where are they gonna, okay,
they're already going through the main entrance right now,
right.
in and out.
But how would you tell construction traffic from one portion of construction traffic from East 53? I don't think that putting a condition upon this gives us a viable avenue toward achieving the solution that we're looking for. Do you know, like, how do you distinguish between what's gonna go right and what's gonna go left?
By putting a parameter in now to discuss for the later development phases, and it's already in place that you can either extend it or you can remove it.
But that condition would be attached to this plat, it would not be attached to the others.
Yes, but those other plats are gonna come out later.
Right, and we can put this type of condition in a reserve where if there's no resolution amongst the parties, I think this is such a small segment of the overall development that we use that concept.
From possibly as a test.
Yes.
Possibly as a test to say, yeah, it really was very difficult, or it didn't alleviate, you get the feedback back. It's really, it's for the construction, this is not something that's worked on, forever.
So that is feedback from the developer, the pros and cons. Plus your.
I don't see it, my personal opinion is I don't see the condition as being viable for this smallest segment of the overall development.
If I might agree, not only that, I don't see the condition being one that is associated with a plat. The other thing is, I think the condition, because it's not backed by regulation, could be illegal unless the applicant would agree to it, which they did on Kingswood. Otherwise, I believe that condition would also have been an illegal condition. Now, the discussion during phase 3 very well could result in a concession, if you will, in that regard. And maybe by that time, the road goes all the way through not only Higbee, but to 105, which is the ultimate goal.
I didn't know that, that's new information for me, to 105 all the way up?
There are significant problems with the Home Place Ranch at this point.
Oh, okay.
So I would recommend that the condition not be placed, but it's your prerogative to do so.
My opinion is we keep that in reserve and we use that as a larger discussion for the next phase of the project, should it be determined that it's needed. You're going to agree to disagree then, sir. Okay. So with that being said, we do have a motion on the table, and I'd like to provide a second to that motion.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask Jennifer to do a roll call vote, please. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The motion's without the condition or with
The motion is without the condition,
And we have a second?
and we have a second.
Okay.
Commissioner Wilhelmie?
Against.
Commissioner Lushnet?
I need process clarification real quick. So we're just voting on the straight up motion
Motion to approve.
to even address that in the future?
The motion on the table is motion to approve. Recommend approval.
Recommend for.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Kimball?
No.
Commissioner Dick?
For approval.
3 votes in favor, 2 votes opposed, motion passes.
Next on the agenda.
Now I'm gonna open the floor for public comment for items that are not on the agenda this evening. Seeing nobody wishing to come forward, I'm gonna close the public comment items, and then we're gonna go to reports and communications, starting from any member of the commission. Does anybody have anything to report back to us on? Reports back? No? Sir? I don't have any. Commissioner Lushnet? No? Staff?
I think Jennifer may cover it, but maybe just remind them of the changes
there will be some additional changes effective January 1. So the two alternates would be regular members. We would have two new alternates take their place. And those would be, we would have a full board.
Do we have
full
everybody,
commission.
everybody's been approved, we're all good?
Yes, those appointments were made a couple months ago to be effective in January. So it's all in place.
Fantastic.
So those would be sort of the changes coming, actually all yours, still the same. So, but those alternate folks would be moving up to regular positions, and there's some alternates in place, so that we always, which is very important, so that we always have enough.
Absolutely.
Right, for them to have a meeting. And so I will be mailing those certificates out, so we won't have the little ceremony here tonight for that, unfortunately. Maybe they can come to another meeting in January for that. And speaking of January, I also have, as part of your packet, I also have some handouts if anyone wants the regular meeting dates for January. We'll also post these on the website and up front, sort of like the Board of Trustees does. These are the regular meeting dates. That's the second Wednesday of the month. We have no holiday conflicts or anything like that, so that makes it easy. These will also be going, the plan is in January, or the first time we meet in the new year, to be providing the commission with essentially, I'm going to call it a handbook, something like that, so that you all have some things that you can refer to, right? It'll include some of the things we've talked about, like the bylaws, the regular meeting dates, other things as we move forward with work sessions and things like that, so you can sort of keep them in there to refer to and discuss and make notes on other things you want to discuss, et cetera. So those are the two big things I have for you, and then we can have some additional discussion following the conclusion of the meeting.
Does nobody has any other comments? Just real quick, just to have it on the record, even though Chairman Delaney isn't here, Chairman Delaney has spent 18 years volunteering for our town in various capacities. And that is a lot of time and effort and energy to give to the town. And even though he isn't here for me to express my appreciation in person, I wanted to put it on the record how much that I appreciate his time and effort, and then the kindness he showed me as the new person when I showed up a few years ago. I very much appreciated it, and the fact that he was very much kind of the institutional memory of this commission. There were things that he worked on many years ago. He could always provide the background for what the discussion was, and I appreciated that and listened.
I believe with a short break, he was on, maybe in between, I believe it was closer to even 30 years in various capacities, especially a trustee.
Yeah.
Many, many years ago.
So hopefully he hears this and appreciates my thank you.
Into, I believe we will be electing a chair at the first of the year.
Yes, so we will have, so you all can start pondering that, if you will. So Ms. Glover is currently our vice chair, and so we will have a vacancy in the chair position come January. And just as a side note, the folks that will be eligible for that position are fairly limited based on your bylaws. It would be Commissioner Dick, Commissioner Glover, and Commissioner Kemple. You do have to have 1 year of service to be elected to an office. I believe they refer to it as an office or a position on the commission. So you all can certainly think about that and how, if you want to shuffle that around or, nominate one of your fellow commissioners. So that will need to take place again. At our first meeting. I don't know if we will have a January 9th meeting at this time. It's unclear whether we will have business.
Could we plan to do it with the expectation that there may be public comment or input? Do you guys have, or is there any other work session items that will need to be?
Not scheduled at this time.
Okay.
But we can certainly chat about that further. But
In that session.
as far as actual agenda business items, I don't have anything that is guaranteed to go yet.
Based on the length of time we spent already and the potential to do this in January, I would ask whether we want to postpone the presentation we had ready for tonight, anticipating we would have started a while ago, until possibly that meeting in January where we could appoint, have the new members here, get the chairman settled, and then go into that presentation if we do not have any items.
I think going forward with the presentation with our new members in place makes a lot of sense. Would you gentlemen
I
agree?
would agree. Can you provide some materials though for us to chew on over the break, or is that
Send them
like what you
modified.
would provide?
We can, I'll just clarify a couple of things. I did invite the alternates and your new alternates, one of your new alternates is here tonight in anticipation of that, so we can at least thank him for coming. Excuse me. The presentation we had planned to do tonight is very similar to the Planning 101 presentation that was given jointly to all boards and commissioners in January of this year, with a few tweaks, but essentially sort of that seemed like a good starting point. So that is available. We can either send that out, or I think it was even recorded. And then sort of the next part of that was I wanted to have a discussion about what other sort of workshop items or work session items that this commission wanted to address. You know, I have a few. You all may have the same ones or different ones or things like that. Obviously, we have to throw the caveat in there that these are all generic in nature, and we could never discuss an actual or a specific project, whether it's, you know, potential future or has already been approved. So these are all sort of big picture discussions.
There are two items that I would like to add on. One, I would like to do, the presentation is wonderful. I attended it in January. I think it provides a lot of clarity to the process. I recommend it to anybody. I would like to add in a discussion of the relationship between the town's comprehensive plan and how that interacts with the town's code and ordinances. And there was another thing that just zoomed out like it. It's like, if you could put, yes, a discussion of interboard communication and email communication, I think for new members coming on board, and the importance of observing the sunshine laws and how that works is an important piece of foundational knowledge.
Sure, and if we're not doing the presentation later tonight, then I need to go ahead and let this commission know as well that the Board of Trustees has set up a CIRSA training for January. CIRSA is the town's insurance provider. They have attorneys, and they provide guidance on exactly what Commissioner Glover is referring to, things about open meetings, laws, quasi-judicial hearings, and you know, the types of, all of those types of things. And so that training is open again to all elected and appointed officials. It'll be on January 22nd at 5:30 at Town Hall, so it's before a board meeting, I believe. And so that has been set up and confirmed with the CIRSA attorneys, and so that is available, and I would encourage you all to at least watch that, right? Those are all live streamed as well, or attend that. That's another good sort of starting point. We can certainly have additional legal type discussions, but that's a really great one to get started, and that's already going to be provided. Sorry about that.
Yeah, just a couple. You're capturing some of these, but if we get these over the holidays, we can digest it and come more prepared versus on the spot feedback or responses during that January engagement. So is there, you know, this would be, yes, is there any analysis of the code at all, things that are falling short? So these have been repeat items. Has there been any analysis done where we're falling short? And then access to code, just for, I love to read. And then draft, there was a draft Parks and Rec plan, may have not have been approved. Can we get or we get the draft of that? Somebody mentioned a safety plan in the last meeting last month. Is that language or just even no safety plan, safety anything?
A safety plan? I don't.
Safety code then. How about just anything related to safety, if there is anything that's out there, draft one not approved or?
Well, so we have the town's, I feel like we should have a mini version of the meeting tonight. So all of the town's codes of all of our ordinances are available on the website, right? Our codes, chapters 1 through, what is it, 17 or 20 or something. So there's an entire chapter on safety and welfare, right? Things that the police use and things like that. There's one including traffic. Obviously, 16 and 17 are the ones planning, primarily focuses on subdivision and zoning. So all of that and is available on the website for you to read any piece of that or all of that if you're so inclined. Is that
anything
what you're referring to?
Planning though, like that, any additional documents that anyone has considered in the recent few years that may have never gotten approved? because it sounds like some things haven't gotten approved, just from conversation. So like the Parks and Rec plan never approved, right? And then, you know, this is the only document, I mean, other than this and some of the water plans that we have, that I have access to, I haven't found anything else in terms of planning guidance, something that we can hold ourselves accountable for.
Is the I-25 overlay that was done, it's incorporated by reference into the comprehensive plan. I don't know if we included the entire text of that document. I think we just simply incorporated it by reference.
Correct.
With the comprehensive plan, so you may want to pull that.
That's on the website.
Is it on the website?
I believe that there's a link
To it?
on the website. We can certainly follow up
And I think
with that.
It's called the I-25 corridor study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was a discussion of like the visual and
Mm-hmm.
and we incorporated that by reference into the comprehensive plan.
Yes, correct.
And Commissioner Kendall mentioned it's on the El Paso County website also.
I have not done
Commissioner Dick?
Another, possible subject for training is legitimate reasons for denying an application. Now, our motion for denial says that we should list the criteria not met. That would be criteria in the Monument Municipal Code.
That's correct.
I've been a member of the commission for 8 or 9 years now, and I've seen lots of negative votes that seemed a little suspect to me, like, we don't need another automotive store here.
Yes.
Or we think that lights, when they open the overhead doors, are going to disturb the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't legitimate reasons for denying requests. I'd like to see that subject addressed. What are the elements? Now, we have to understand that by the time we get to see these proposed projects, you've spent perhaps even hundreds of hours poring
Correct.
over them, negotiating with the developer or the applicant about these finite issues. Seems a little silly for us to try and reopen some of those details that, you know, don't apply. Tonight's suggestion that we should not allow construction traffic didn't apply to this application at all.
Mm-hmm.
So why did we waste a lot of time on that subject?
Sure.
Those are the sorts of things I think would be very beneficial to cover.
Okay. I think SRSA may touch on it.
Pardon?
I think the SRSA training may touch on some of that. We can certainly delve
Good.
even deeper into that and perhaps have a attorney present
Yeah.
to help give some guidance.
Well, I think that just goes back to why we're here. You know, why are we open to the public for public input? Maybe there's something that was considered or thought about. And this whole idea that there are natural consequences to suggestions, even if it comes to us recommended approval. You know, why are we here? I mean, if we're just rubber stamping what's been approved, why waste everyone's time?
You'll find that we do waste a lot of time talking about some of these issues that really have no point.
Well,
But-
let me, so there's a tension here between this vision, which I think, I mean, I've been here 4 years now, and I've built in this community, and I'm fully in, I don't care if it's a school, church, anything. But there's a tension with a vision and code.
Absolutely.
So when I said, yes, the code's accessible, the one I didn't get to on my list here is what is the process for changing code? Just, if that's detailed too, then I just haven't read that.
Changing code meaning ordinances.
That will allow us to align our vision with what we're doing.
Board of Trustees approves any ordinance changes, and just to sort of answer your question, sort of jump back to Commissioner Glover's question, we still are anticipating and hoping and looking forward to updating the zoning code this coming year. In 2019 is our goal. As we've talked about, right, a couple of times we've applied for a DOLA grant for matching funds to what the town has approved in the budget to move forward. And so that would allow us to look at the code as a whole. Certainly, we could bring forward, based at the board's direction, a single item or a single line or a single topic, and change at any time. The board can do that. What we've talked about sort of as a group numerous times is at this point, it seems like that has been done for so many years, and it can be very tricky to make sure that one change, how does it affect, right, like 47 other places? That's where we've had some struggles. So we're really excited right now about if we can look at it as a whole. That's certainly not to give anyone the misleading information that is going to solve all of what their perceived issues are, right, or problems are, or that will be an easy or quick process, because it absolutely will not be. And we may get into it and we may only have the funding to do a portion or something like that, right? We don't know at this time. But essentially the short answer is it has to come from the Board of Trustees. They make that approval through public hearings.
We're another board, right? So do I have the ability to act as somebody who's gonna propose those changes, write the changes, get them vetted legally, and then bring them forward? Or as a board member, am I in conflict with bylaws now? So do you see what I'm getting at? I'm invested in anything so this is the same thing in the military, FYI, right? And right now, there's not many people there's never enough manpower to do all the writing and critical things
Sure.
you need. So, but you have some people here that you can see the tension in here. We're conflicted because
Definitely.
we feel this, we believe this, and if we have something standing in our way from aligning everything, then we gotta do there's hard work in changes. There's also hard work in engaging a community.
But the process isn't simply just writing and presenting something for the Board of Trustees approval. It's an actual, just so you know what to
Sure,
expect.
what?
It'll be an 18 to 24-month process, I would expect.
Why?
Because comprehensive review and having public input and stakeholder input from the residents who live here, from the businesses from the community, from the different stakeholder groups, is a long process. And we don't want to do it piecemeal, because piecemeal provides even more conflict. And that's why we've been asking, we'll probably require bringing in an outside consultant to manage the entire process because of the workload currently on Larry and Jennifer, which is extraordinary. So expect that when it comes, we need, I've been keeping a little laundry list on the side. There are so many things that need to be addressed that doing it in less than a complete comprehensive manner would.
I'm imagining there's, let's just say, in most documents that you've come across, this is my job in the past, in most documents there's probably 80 to 90% that's perfect already. It's not perfect, we're close. If you're saying that we're in the overhaul process,
yes,
then we're definitely not in alignment at all. So that's where this tension is gonna exist here, it's gonna exist at different boards until that alignment happens.
And
I agree with you.
And in some ways, the reality is that the comp plan is meant to be a guiding document. It is meant to be very positive, to be honest, very forward-looking and very best-case scenario. That is what is it intended to do. And in some ways, the ordinances and the reality on the ground will never match that 100%, right? Some of that is based on what's already there, right? We can change every ordinance and write the comp plan to say, anything, and it's not gonna change what's on the ground, and it's not gonna change certain property owners' rights, right, and things like that. So there will always be a certain amount of conflict, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's still sort of always this aspirational, again, guiding document. It's not a regulatory document, and that's really sort of one of the answers to your other question as well, is the codes. The ordinances are regulatory, and the comprehensive plan is not.
but the two are
But they're both important, and they serve different roles.
out of whack with each
And for example,
Well, that's what I'm saying, is any, let me just, so that is forecast for almost any business model, any business, or even a bureaucracy for failure long-term. That's what I'm getting at is, I don't go write strategy documents for any organization I have that is not informed by the law, and we don't create a vision, we don't create things like this that aren't, that this would be an action that could be required to be overhauled, or that I'm gonna tailor my vision so that we're in alignment to some degree.
Or a property owner might turn around and sue and win because you put something in your comprehensive plan that takes away his property rights.
I mean, as an attorney, I don't, the threat of lawsuit is not, it's always there. I mean, anyone can sue anyone, and that's a fact. But, you know, in terms of the importance of the plan document, I mean, I see where it was formally adopted, you know, where it was integrated into what we should consider. The planning commission makes the following findings. Comprehensive plan correctly categorizes land uses and proactively prepares and protects the town from future growth and surroundings of the town. I mean, these are like, a lot of work went into this.
Definitely.
And the fact that it can just be pushed aside for a statute that is written as is, this is the best interpretation of the intent of statutes and the intent of the citizen monument to effectuate those statutes, regulations. That's really what I see this. The whole idea of adopting this, a resolution adopting the comprehensive plan, is to give it some weight. And to just say, well, you know, it's important, but ultimately what is going to, well, this to me holds just as much weight as the ordinance as well as the recommendation that you provide.
And that's why we
I don't
need to
know how
have
to
a
respond to
discussion in January. So, January, I don't necessarily agree with everything that you said there.
Sure.
I agree with the importance of the document, but the ways that that is in conflict with the statute, I mean, this is an issue, but, having a realistic idea of what to expect should the project move forward, I think is important. And we can discuss this, I think, further, and the relationship of this document to ordinance stuff, I think, is a big topic that we need in January, which is why I think we should meet again in January, even if it's just for a work session. Maybe we do a quick public comment period, let people talk if they want to talk, and then go to work session.
I'd love to hear more, I mean, there's a lot more I'd love to hear, sort of experiences and insights. I mean, 8 to 9 years doing this. I don't know, actually, the total experience, we've been doing this for, so I don't know.
Oh, no, I was thinking of what, I mean, I've been here, what,
So
3
this is
and
all-
a half, am I 3.5 years now?
a little more.
Maybe a little more.
Yeah, 3.5 or so. I would still urge the importance of sort of the planning basics, which is what we were going to do tonight, or
Yes, the
just because,
procedure is important.
well, I feel like it's sort of the foundation to then understand some of the other parts, and I don't want to ever imply that you don't understand anything. It's just there's a lot of pieces at play, right? And while we deal with it every day, I know you deal with lots of other things every day. Obviously, you can study for years, right? Planning and these types of things.
But no,
Some of it are opinions and some of it
presentation is
aren't.
fantastic, so it'll be very useful in January, I think.
So, but we can certainly add to it and have some of these other discussions, maybe as a part of it. I don't know.
Is there, no, last one, is there any conflict if you're proposing code changes, sitting where we sit? As a board member, if we propose code changes, are we just acting as a citizen on monument? 'Cause, I mean, there's a roles and responsibilities for each
Sure.
position you take on.
I will repeat what our town attorney at the time in January answered some similar questions with, which was, is it 100% against the rules or illegal? No, it's not. Is it advised against? Probably, because the reality is, once you take on the role as commissioner, right, the planning commission has one voice, and the planning commission makes a recommendation. And so, right, it's not exactly the Supreme Court, right, where we have a lengthy dissent and those types of things as well. So the Planning Commission has one voice, and so it does get problematic when the Planning Commission has 8 voices And so that's the gray area.
We can't take a winger and represent all of us.
No, I wouldn't be representing us, I'm just saying is, if there's, so we're hitting this problem in other organizations as well, lack of manpower resources. So here's one scenario we run in quickly. We don't have the budget, no budget gets approved to support such an endeavor, right? So
Sure.
there will be lines, we have to work within what we have.
Sure.
So there's also people that are willing to, in their time, to do stuff like this and research and help. That's why I was asking, what capacity? I mean, because then if you're saying you can't be on the board, then you can't, then I understand there's consequences if I want to go do something else.
I would suggest to you that you have some ideas, give them to us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really your connection to the board.
I wouldn't advise that you go have your own public meetings.
No, that's not what that was what I was suggesting, but doing my own homework, just going through a process, there's a process.
Yeah,
for
just send
presenting
us
it.
what you think, and so we can react to it. And if it gets to the point where it needs to, we can bring it forward to the whole commission.
Sure, okay.
We can bring it forward. That way you're not the proponent necessarily.
Well, I spoke the other month to the board of trustees because I felt it was important enough to bring up about when we had this long discussion about the sidewalk. How do we rectify that for safety considerations?
Yeah.
And after talking with yourselves after a while, and the ease of it, of talking to the developer and talking to Tri-View, which I have talked to Tri-View, they don't have a real issue with doing that, except they don't want to use rock. They wanted to have landscape like grass or something like that. They just don't want to use small rocks and stuff, because that becomes a pain. So when I brought that to the board's attention, because you're gonna have this, I said, I'm talking to you as a resident because there's an issue. And I know the only thing that was passed to the board was, well, it's a snowplow issue, but that wasn't the issue. It was cosmetics, it was have everything uniforms, like they were like on Lion's Tail and on Glen Eagle and stuff. But the only reason why I talked to them is because I didn't think that they were getting the full interpretation of what everything they're talking about and all the notes to the board trustees so they can make a sound decision. Because the only thing, after I spoke the following month when the planner brought it up, the only thing that was mentioned, the only thing they asked about was there an issue about snow removal? That was the only thing that was talked about. It wasn't talked about, continuity between, the safety for the kids walking to and from school and how the development, how it's gonna overlook long-term when the other developers come in. You gotta start now to start the process before they come in and set the tone and foundation. So that's why I spoke up the other month as one of my topics that I brought up, because I don't think that all the notes are getting up to the board of trustees. And I don't think they're being fully told everything that was, because whether or not it passes on this board, it still goes up to the board of trustees.
And the same folks can come and say the same process, same corporate process.
And we just provide a recommendation, so if we
Yeah.
vote no, it doesn't stop with us, it still goes to
It
them.
still goes to the board of trustees. Yeah.
But to your point though, kind of like this discussion, the time that was, we articulated how many issues.
Yeah.
Even just like the parks issue, I remember that
Couple
being
factors,
something,
yeah.
certain things.
Yeah.
Is it always, how fast? One thing it goes right to the next week, next working, or will it go?
It goes to the first board meeting of the following month. There's very rare exceptions to that. Occasionally, it has to do with how the months line up, where very rarely it can go sooner. It's the first meeting of the following month, so things tonight go January 7th, even though there's a meeting next Monday, because obviously it can't make it into the packet for that meeting. So it goes to the meeting the following month, and it is noticed all at one time, which is probably something for this commission to remember when we start talking about continuing things. That always makes me a little bit nervous, because it has been noticed for that next board meeting. So I would urge this commission that most of the time to go ahead and make a recommendation one way or another. The board can always remand something back. They have that authority, but it is important for you all to know that the public notice has gone out. Again, for those residents, those are the 2 dates that are set for them to know that they can come and, have their say and provide their feedback.
need a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
No, this
So moved.
is, sorry it took so long. Thank
That's
you.
okay.
Thank you so much.
I wish we would have just read through it. I think it would have answered a lot of these questions.
Sorry. We have a motion to adjourn. Have a second, please. All in favor, aye. We're adjourned.
Teresa, will you stop recording?
Yeah, lots of talk.
My thought was.
Yeah, some of the interesting issues here are whether we are to evaluate individual projects based on the master plan. You brought up a couple of things from the master plan, like safety